Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Insurance Experts. It's my pleasure to have on the line Linda Thalheimer. Linda is not only my friend, but she's also a long-term care insurance specialist. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mark.
So, Linda, not everyone begins their career in long-term care planning. Tell me a little bit about your journey and how you became a long-term care specialist.
I'll be honest, I didn't wake up one morning and think, oh, I want to be a long-term care insurance specialist. I came from a healthcare background, and I worked in healthcare for 16 years. And in the last 8 years of my health career, I worked in nursing homes. And over those 8 years, I watched the nursing home care unfortunately go down. And it became much more difficult for me to exercise a higher quality of care that I'd like to provide my patients. And I got an offer from one of the insurance companies to learn more about long-term care insurance. And when I went to the process, I thought, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing. This is the answer to a problem for many, many people. And I got very excited and got my license, and I've now been doing it for 20 years.
Wow,
And I'm completely passionate.
that's awesome. So, over the 20 years, if you had to just take a rough guess as to how many clients you've helped, what do you think that number would be?
Oh gosh, maybe 700, maybe more.
Wow. So those are a lot of families that you've helped, and you've seen it in action, both not only when people are buying long-term care insurance, but I'm sure you've also seen on the other side of it, people activating their benefits and having claims and things like that. What kind of gives you the greatest fulfillment in terms of what you do, helping people?
Uh, I think you feel the greatest when you actually see these policies go into effect. Having been in the career for 20 years, I have many people who go into claim, and they now go regularly into claim on a monthly basis. And when I talk to them and they have money to fund long-term care at the highest quality level, it gives their family such a sense of freedom. And I have people who call me regularly saying, thank you so much, because without this policy, we would never be able to have provided this level of care.
That's
And then the kids, who see their parents get it, and they've seen how great it is, and the kids want to have the long-term care insurance. So, seeing the whole process from having them start to being able to go into claim is a very,
yeah.
positive thing.
And I think you touched upon a number of questions that are commonly asked about it. What does that process look like? How much does long-term care insurance cost? So I'd love for you to cover that today, as part of our theme. What does your process look like when you're working with a client trying to determine what's the right fit for them?
All right. So, well, I usually start with, what is the cost of care?
Mhm.
So, what is the cost of care in their area? And every state is different. So, I like to understand where people are not only living now, but where they might choose to live in retirement. And so, we want to look at the more expensive state that they might consider to retire in.
Mhm.
And then I help provide them with an education of understanding what those costs are, both in home care and assisted living. The goal being to stay out of nursing homes,
Mhm.
to be able to stay in a private pay setting, and to supplement that care with additional home care if needed, as opposed to going into a nursing home.
Okay.
And um, and understanding that home care and facility care inflate at different rates. So and then of course we need to understand what's important to that client. What are their goals? Do they intend, or is their primary goal to stay in home, to the end of time?
Mhm.
And we certainly have people holding on to that doorknob much tighter than others.
Mhm.
But many people will want to try to stay in their homes for 24-hour care, and only have to leave when they're absolutely required to leave. And some people may never have to leave their home.
Mhm.
And other people will look forward more to the social environment of an assisted living. And oftentimes, assisted living can feel less structured than even a home care situation, where an aide is sitting in their house waiting to help them. And in assisted living, they can get help, and the aide goes away, and they push a button, and an aide comes back, and they get their help, and the aide goes away. So they feel more independent in their own setting. So understanding what's important to the client, and understanding that there may be a continuum of care, that they may start in home care and then go to assisted living,
Right.
and maybe then add additional help to that assisted living.
Mhm.
So we look at the costs, and then we look at what their goals are. Do they want to leave money to their heirs? Do they want to make sure that they just have enough for quality care for themselves? And and then we look at the cost of care, we inflate it to what we anticipate it to be, and then we look at that cost of care. And then I provide them with options for long-term care. And I explain that there are basically, in a general level, two types of insurance policies. There are traditional policies that stand alone, and there are hybrids that are mixed where there are return of premiums, generally speaking. And then I help them appreciate the value of one over the other, dependent upon individual situations. And then I'll do a complete comparison of all the policies that are available in their state, so they know that I've done my due diligence, so they can feel they've done their due diligence. And then we come down to the policy that's going to make the most sense for them. And then we look at the different options of how to work that policy that will best meet their needs.
I see. So it begins with like a financial planning process. And I know you work with a lot of financial planners. You work with a lot of financially savvy clients, that manage their own money or trying to figure this out for themselves. And then it sounds like that kind of directs you to which is the right type of solution for them. What I'd like to kind of hear from you also is, how does this apply to a real client situation, someone you had worked with recently? And I know you had someone you shared with me before that was a good example of your process here. What did her situation look like?
Okay, so a very common situation. I have a young lady who's 55, and she has a child, a young adult, I should say, independent on her own. And she had been looking into long-term care for the last 5 years. She didn't really have any experiences in long-term care, but she knew that it was something that was important. And she was a very organized person who, when I reviewed her income and her assets, she could give it down to the penny, which is very, very rare. So she was able to really tell me, what she had, and then it helps me understand what's going to be affordable to her. So so we do talk about finances. But the thing was that it was, most people would love to be able to leave something behind to a family member. Mm-hmm. But most importantly, it's to make sure that she's not a burden to her daughter, that her daughter would not have to provide care for her, and that she would have enough funds to live at home and then go to assisted living, which she thinks would probably be better for her because she's a very social person, to go to assisted living and be able to afford that. Mm-hmm. So, one of her concerns was about rate increases. And although products are much more stable than they've ever been in the past, because their actuarials are much sounder, I explained to her that there are ways to have increased stability with shorter pay periods, that she could pay up a policy in 10 years. And so by age 65, she would have no expenses. Mm-hmm. And when we looked at that product, obviously it's more expensive than the annual product. We came up with a creative way of splitting it in half, so that half of the policy would be in a short pay that would be paid up between 55 and 65, and the other half would be an annual pay, so that by the time she got to retirement, that annual premium would be so small it wouldn't feel like much of a premium.
Right. And that's a very clever kind of solution. And it sounds like you basically prepaid almost one of the policies so she could pay it out of her working years' income, and then you created a much smaller amount of premium that was required of her later in life. So you could kind of customize this exactly to her finances and what her concerns were.
Exactly. So there are some people who can look at this, and there are some people who can do a single pay and say, you know what, we've got money put aside. Let's just pay for it, be done for it, and never have to worry about it again. There are others who like to pay over a period of time and know that by the time their retirement or shortly into retirement, they're done paying. And there are others who feel much more comfortable with a set fee that they pay every year. And of course, that can be broken down into, monthly payments, although I strongly discourage that, because I don't believe that people should be paying interest charges when the banks don't pay that much for them.
Right. And you also kind of gave me a little bit of a tidbit before about her profession. You said, I think she was like an entrepreneur, or she was self-employed, correct?
Right. So that was one of the other important things that I discussed with people. So there are tax benefits, although I'm not a CPA and don't give tax advice. I do let people know that by having a qualified long-term care policy, they can take age-based um, deductions on their premiums, and the benefit is still received tax-free. So it's a double win for people who are self-employed, whether they be an independent producer, or they are a partnership, or they're an S corp. Any of those people can take these age-based deductions, which is really nice.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate all you do for your clients out there. Thanks so much for sharing your story here and your process with us.
Thank you. And I love helping people and helping them make educated decisions.